Howdy, folks, and welcome. Today we're journeying back to the tumultuous time of the American Civil War. We're going to delve into the life of a man who played a pivotal role in the war between the states, Union General Henry Halleck. Born in 1815, Halleck's life was intertwined with pivotal moments in American history. He wasn't just present, he shaped the course of events. From his early years as a military scholar to his rise through the ranks, Halleck's story is one of ambition, intellect, and the heavy burden of command. We'll trace his footsteps from the hallowed halls of West Point to the battlefields where the fate of a nation hung in the balance. Get ready, because we're about to unravel the complexities of this military strategist and his impact on one of America's most defining chapters. Now, before we dive headfirst into Halleck's story, let's set the scene. Imagine a young nation barely a century old, torn apart by the issue of slavery. The year is 1861, and the fires of secession are raging. The southern states had seceded, forming the Confederate States of America. The Union was fractured, and the stage was set for a conflict that would test the very soul of America. It was a time of immense uncertainty and fear as brother turned against brother, and the nation braced itself for a long and bloody war. Amidst this backdrop of division and turmoil, Henry Halleck, a man of sharp intellect and military prowess, would find himself thrust into the heart of the storm. He became a key figure in the Union Army, his strategic mind tasked with navigating the complexities of this unprecedented conflict. As the war raged on, Halleck's responsibilities grew, and he faced challenges that tested his resolve and military acumen. From the Western Theater to the halls of power in Washington, D.C., Halleck's decisions carried the weight of countless lives. He was known for his meticulous planning and logistical brilliance, earning him the nickname Old Brains. His strategic mind grappled with the enormity of the task at hand, preserving the Union. But war is a fickle beast, and victory often comes at a steep price. Halleck's story is one of triumphs and setbacks, of bold strategies and agonizing decisions. Join us as we explore the life of this complex figure and his indelible mark on the course of American history. Our story begins in the rolling hills of western New York, where Henry Wager Halleck was born on July 16, 1815. Picture a time when America was still in its infancy, its future uncertain, and its identity still being forged. It was in this world on a farm near Utica, New York, that young Henry took his first breath. His parents, Joseph Halleck and Catherine Wager Halleck, were descendants of early American settlers, their roots running deep in the soil of the new nation. Joseph, a farmer by trade, had fought in the War of 1812, instilling in young Henry a sense of duty and patriotism that would shape his destiny. Life on the farm was far from idyllic. It was a world of hard work and simple living where the rhythms of nature dictated the pace of life. But amidst the chores and challenges, Henry's parents recognized their son's sharp intellect and insatiable curiosity. They knew that he was destined for something more than a life behind a plow. Growing up in the shadow of his father's military service, Henry developed a fascination with all things military. The stories of battles fought and heroes honored sparked a fire in his young imagination. It wasn't just the glory that captivated him. It was the strategy, the discipline, the intricate dance of men and machines on the battlefield. His early education was a mix of formal schooling and practical lessons learned on the family farm. The classroom provided him with a solid foundation in mathematics and literature, while the farm instilled in him the values of hard work, perseverance, and self-reliance. As Henry grew older, his thirst for knowledge became unquenchable. He devoured books on history, military strategy, and engineering, his mind soaking up information like a sponge. He possessed a keen intellect and a remarkable capacity for learning, quickly surpassing his peers in academic pursuits. Recognizing their son's potential, Henry's parents made the decision to send him to live with his uncle, David Wager, a prominent judge and state senator. Under his uncle's tutelage, Henry received a rigorous education, immersing himself in the classics, languages, and the law. Judge Wager's influence extended beyond academics. He introduced Henry to the world of politics and law, exposing him to the intricacies of power and governance. These early experiences would prove invaluable as Halleck navigated the complex world of military leadership and political maneuvering during the tumultuous years of the Civil War. By his late teens, Halleck had blossomed into a bright and ambitious young man, his mind sharp, his ambition clear. He had set his sights on a career in the military, and he knew that the path to success lay through the hallowed halls of the United States Military Academy at West Point. In 1835, at the age of 19, Henry Halleck received an appointment to West Point, the prestigious academy that had produced generations of American military leaders. It was a dream come true for the young man from upstate New York, a chance to hone his skills and prove his worth among the nation's best and brightest. Life at West Point was demanding, both physically and intellectually. The curriculum was rigorous, emphasizing engineering, mathematics, military history, and strategy. Halleck, with his insatiable thirst for knowledge and his natural aptitude for military subjects, thrived in this challenging environment. He excelled in his studies, consistently ranking among the top of his class. His professors recognized his intellect and his dedication, praising his analytical mind and his grasp of military theory. But Halleck wasn't just a bookish cadet. He also demonstrated a natural talent for leadership, earning the respect of his peers and the admiration of his superiors. Beyond his academic pursuits, Halleck found time to explore his diverse interests. He developed a passion for literature, immersing himself in the works of Shakespeare, Byron, and other literary giants. He also became an accomplished musician, playing the flute and piano with skill and sensitivity. His intellectual curiosity extended beyond the arts. Halleck was fascinated by the burgeoning field of engineering, particularly its applications in military fortifications and coastal defense. He devoured books and articles on the subject, eagerly absorbing the latest advancements in this rapidly evolving field. In 1839, after 4 years of rigorous study and training, Halleck graduated from West Point, standing third in his class of 31 cadets. His academic achievements and his demonstrated leadership qualities earned him a commission as a second lieutenant in the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. A new chapter in his life was about to begin, one that would take him from the classrooms of West Point to the front lines of conflict. Following his graduation from West Point, Halleck's early military career was marked by a series of assignments that showcased his engineering skills and his growing reputation as a brilliant military mind. He served as an assistant professor of engineering at West Point, sharing his knowledge and expertise with the next generation of military leaders. He also played a crucial role in fortifying New York Harbor, designing and overseeing the construction of defensive works that would protect the city from potential naval attacks. Halleck's engineering prowess and his strategic vision earned him recognition and respect within the Army Corps of Engineers. When the Mexican-American War erupted in 1846, Halleck eagerly sought an opportunity to test his skills on the battlefield. He was assigned to the staff of General Winfield Scott, one of the most respected military commanders of the era. Serving as Scott's military secretary and aide-de-camp, Halleck witnessed firsthand the complexities of warfare and the challenges of command. During the Mexican War, Halleck's duties took him to the heart of enemy territory, where he participated in the siege of Veracruz and the capture of Mexico City. He distinguished himself through his bravery, his tactical acumen, and his ability to remain calm under pressure. For his service in the Mexican War, Halleck received 2 brevet promotions, recognizing his gallantry and his contributions to the American victory. But it was his experiences beyond the battlefield that would have a lasting impact on his career. During his time in Mexico, Halleck developed a keen interest in military history and strategy, immersing himself in the study of past campaigns. and the writings of renowned military theorists. He became fascinated by the Napoleonic Wars, meticulously studying the campaigns and strategies of Napoleon Bonaparte. Halleck recognized the importance of logistics, organization, and decisive action in warfare, lessons he would carry with him throughout his career. Upon his return from Mexico, Halleck blended his military experience with scholarly pursuits. Assigned to California, he played a key role during the Gold Rush. As Secretary of State, he helped draft California's Constitution. Halleck oversaw infrastructure projects essential to the state's growth. He continued to write and lecture on military subjects, published a translation of a French work on military theory. The nation was on the brink of a crisis that would test Halleck's skills. By the mid-1850s, after his impactful stint in California, Halleck returned to the East Coast. He carried with him a wealth of experience, not just as a soldier and engineer, but also as an administrator and a scholar. The nation, however, was showing signs of the deep divisions that would soon erupt. Halleck resumed his military duties, primarily focusing on engineering projects and coastal fortifications. His expertise was highly sought after, and his insights were valued by those in charge of national defense. However, his heart seemed to be more drawn to the intellectual pursuits that had always fascinated him. He immersed himself in the study of military history and strategy, becoming a recognized expert on Napoleonic warfare. His writings and lectures garnered attention, and he was increasingly seen as a leading military theorist of his time. But the world of academia couldn't shield him from the turmoil that was brewing in the nation. Halleck's contributions to military thought were significant. He firmly believed in the importance of logistics and organization in warfare, emphasizing the need for clear lines of command and efficient supply lines. These principles, gleaned from his study of history and his own experiences, would become hallmarks of his leadership during the Civil War. In 1856, he published a book titled Elements of Military Art and Science, which quickly became a standard text at military academies and among officers in the U.S. Army. This work further solidified his reputation as a brilliant military mind and a forward-thinking strategist. His writings reflected his belief in a systematic approach to warfare, emphasizing the importance of planning, discipline, and a thorough understanding of the enemy. Little did he know that these very principles would soon be put to the test on a scale far greater than he could have imagined. As Halleck's reputation as a military scholar grew, so too did his stature within the Army. He was promoted to the rank of captain in 1853 and then to major in 1861, just as the nation teetered on the brink of civil war. His expertise was in high demand, and he was often consulted on matters of military strategy and national defense. Despite his growing prominence in military circles, Halleck remained a somewhat enigmatic figure. He was known for his intelligence and his meticulous attention to detail, but he could also be reserved and even aloof. Some saw him as cold and calculating, more comfortable with books and maps than with the rough-and-tumble realities of leading men in battle. However, those who knew him best recognized his deep sense of duty and his unwavering commitment to the Union. They understood that beneath his reserved exterior beat the heart of a patriot, a man who would answer the call to service when his nation needed him most. In a surprising turn of events, Halleck resigned his commission from the Army in 1854 to pursue a career in the burgeoning railroad industry. He had always been fascinated by engineering and infrastructure, and he saw the potential of railroads to transform the nation. He became the general superintendent of the Illinois Central Railroad, a position that allowed him to apply his organizational skills and his eye for detail to the complex world of railroad management. During his time with the Illinois Central, he earned a reputation as a shrewd businessman and an effective administrator. Though seemingly a departure from his military background, his time in the railroad industry honed his logistical skills and his understanding of large-scale operations. Little did he know that these experiences would prove invaluable when he returned to military service just a few years later. The 1850s saw the issue of slavery drive a deeper wedge between the North and the South. The debate over states' rights versus federal authority intensified, pushing the nation closer to the precipice of war. Halleck, though immersed in the world of railroads, could not escape the growing tensions that gripped the nation. He watched with increasing concern as the political climate became more polarized and the threat of secession loomed large. Like many Americans, he hoped for a peaceful resolution, but feared that the divisions had become too deep to bridge. His military background and his deep understanding of history gave him a unique perspective on the crisis. He knew that if war were to come, it would be a long and bloody conflict, one that would test the very fabric of the nation. As the nation hurtled towards disunion, Halleck found himself increasingly drawn back into the orbit of military affairs. He closely followed the events leading up to the secession of South Carolina and the formation of the Confederate States of America. He understood the gravity of the situation and the challenges that lay ahead for the Union. His expertise on military strategy and logistics was once again in demand as the North began to mobilize for what seemed like an inevitable conflict. While he had achieved success in the civilian world, Halleck's heart remained with the military. He recognized that his skills and experience would be needed in the coming struggle, and he stood ready to serve his country once more. Despite his military background and his understanding of the impending crisis, Halleck was initially hesitant to rejoin the Army. He had built a successful career in the private sector, and he was reluctant to uproot his life once more for the uncertainties of war. Furthermore, he was acutely aware of the political complexities of the conflict and the immense responsibilities that would come with a high-ranking command. However, as the situation deteriorated and the call to duty grew louder, Halleck found it impossible to ignore the pull of his patriotic duty. His sense of honor and his belief in the importance of preserving the Union ultimately outweighed his personal reservations. When the opportunity arose for him to rejoin the Army and contribute to the Union cause, Halleck answered the call, setting aside his personal ambitions to serve his nation in its hour of need. With the outbreak of the Civil War in April 1861, Halleck could no longer remain on the sidelines. He was commissioned as a major general in the Union Army, his expertise and experience immediately sought after by a Union government desperate for skilled military leadership. His initial assignment was in the Department of the Missouri, a strategically vital region that controlled access to the Mississippi River and the Western Territories. It was a challenging post fraught with political complexities and the constant threat of Confederate attack. Halleck, with his characteristic thoroughness, immediately set about organizing the Union forces under his command. He understood the importance of logistics and supply lines, and he worked tirelessly to ensure that his troops were well equipped and prepared for the fight ahead. His pre-war reputation as old brains proved accurate as his strategic mind began to grapple with the enormous task of securing the West for the Union. The Civil War had begun, and Henry Halleck was thrust onto the center stage of a conflict that would shape the destiny of a nation. As the Civil War raged, the Western theater emerged as a crucial battleground. It was a vast and sprawling region, encompassing the vital waterways of the Mississippi, Tennessee, and Cumberland rivers. Control of this theater was essential for both the Union and the Confederacy, and Henry Halleck found himself at the heart of the struggle. Appointed commander of the Department of the Missouri in 1861, Halleck brought his strategic acumen and organizational skills to bear on the challenges of securing the West for the Union. His task was daunting. The Confederacy had established a strong presence in the region, and pro-Southern sentiment ran deep in many areas. Halleck, ever the meticulous planner, set about organizing his forces, improving training, and securing supply lines. He understood that victory in the West wouldn't come easily. It would require a combination of military might, strategic vision, and political savvy. One of Halleck's early successes in the West was the Missouri Campaign of 1861. Missouri, a border state with deep divisions, became a focal point of the early war. Confederate forces, under the command of Sterling Price, threatened to overrun the state and seize control of the vital city of St. Louis. Halleck, in coordination with Union forces under Nathaniel Lyon and Samuel Curtis, launched a series of offensive operations aimed at pushing back the Confederate advance. The campaign culminated in the Battle of Pea Ridge in March 1862, a Union victory that effectively secured Missouri for the Union. Halleck's role in the Missouri Campaign showcased his strategic thinking and his ability to coordinate multiple commands. His success in keeping Missouri within the Union was a significant early victory for the North and bolstered his reputation as a capable commander. As Halleck's star rose in the West, tensions emerged between him and other Union commanders. His cautious nature and his insistence on thorough planning sometimes clashed with the more aggressive instincts of generals like Ulysses S. Grant and William T. Sherman. Halleck's critics accused him of being overly cautious, of missing opportunities to deliver decisive blows to the enemy. They argued that his methodical approach, while effective in some respects, could also be frustratingly slow and indecisive. Despite these criticisms, Halleck's supporters pointed to his organizational skills, his logistical brilliance, and his ability to maintain order in a chaotic theater of war. They argued that his cautious approach was often necessary, given the high stakes and the limited resources available to the Union forces in the West. One of the most significant developments in the Western theater, and indeed in the entire Civil War, was the rise of Ulysses S. Grant. Grant, a West Point graduate who had struggled in civilian life, found his true calling in the crucible of war. Halleck initially had reservations about Grant, questioning his judgment and his personal habits. However, Grant's early victories at Fort Henry and Fort Donelson, which opened up the Tennessee and Cumberland rivers to Union control, could not be ignored. Halleck, recognizing Grant's potential, gradually came to rely on him, entrusting him with greater responsibilities and providing him with the resources he needed to succeed. The relationship between Halleck and Grant, while sometimes strained, would prove to be one of the most consequential partnerships of the Civil War. The captures of Fort Henry and Fort Donelson in early 1862 were early turning points in the Western theater. These Confederate strongholds controlled vital waterways, and their fall into Union hands opened up new avenues for the Union advance. Grant's boldness in attacking Fort Donelson, coupled with his demand for unconditional surrender from the Confederate commander, captured the attention of the North and established him as a rising star in the Union Army. Halleck, though initially cautious about Grant's aggressive tactics, recognized the significance of these victories. However, the Battle of Shiloh in April 1862 proved to be a more costly and controversial affair. Grant's forces, caught by surprise by a Confederate attack, suffered heavy losses on the first day of fighting. Halleck, arriving on the scene with reinforcements, helped stabilize the Union lines and secure a victory on the second day. In the aftermath of Shiloh, Halleck's reputation as a cautious commander was solidified. He reorganized the Union forces in the West, consolidating Grant's and Buell's armies under his direct command. His focus shifted towards logistics and supply, ensuring that his troops were adequately equipped and positioned for future campaigns. While his critics argued that his caution slowed the Union advance and gave the Confederacy time to regroup, Halleck's supporters maintained that his methodical approach was necessary to consolidate gains and minimize casualties. Under Halleck's command, the Union Army in the West began a slow but steady advance, capturing key cities like Corinth, Mississippi, and Memphis, Tennessee. The noose was tightening around the Confederacy's hold on the vital Mississippi River. The capture of Vicksburg, Mississippi, was a major turning point in the Civil War. This strategically vital city sat high on bluffs overlooking a bend in the Mississippi River, controlling all traffic along the waterway. Grant, given command of the Vicksburg campaign, devised a brilliant and daring plan to capture the city. He marched his army south through Mississippi, crossing the river below Vicksburg, and cutting himself off from his supply lines. Halleck, initially hesitant about Grant's risky plan, eventually gave his approval. For 47 days, Grant's forces besieged Vicksburg, bombarding the city and slowly tightening their grip. On July 4, 1863, the Confederate garrison surrendered, giving the Union control of the Mississippi River and splitting the Confederacy in two. While Halleck's tenure in the West was marked by significant successes, it was not without its share of challenges and controversies. His cautious nature and his tendency towards micromanagement sometimes created friction with his subordinate commanders. His relationship with Grant in particular remained complex. While Halleck recognized Grant's military talents, he also harbored concerns about Grant's drinking and his perceived recklessness on the battlefield. Despite these tensions, Halleck played a crucial role in supporting Grant's campaigns and providing him with the resources he needed to succeed. In the end, their shared goal of defeating the Confederacy outweighed their personal differences. One of Halleck's greatest contributions to the Union war effort was his logistical brilliance. He understood that wars were not won solely on the battlefield. They required efficient organization, reliable supply lines, and a well-coordinated system for moving troops and supplies. In the Western theater, where vast distances and limited infrastructure posed significant challenges, Halleck's logistical skills proved invaluable. He oversaw the construction of railroads, the improvement of river transportation, and the establishment of supply depots to support the Union armies in the field. Halleck's attention to detail and his ability to anticipate logistical challenges earned him the nickname Old Brains. His logistical prowess was essential in sustaining the Union war effort in the West and contributed significantly to the North's ultimate victory. The Civil War was not just a military conflict, it was also a political struggle. Halleck, as a high-ranking commander, found himself navigating the treacherous waters of Washington politics. He had to contend with rivalries among generals, political interference from the Lincoln administration, and the ever-present scrutiny of the press. While Halleck was not known for his political skills, he generally maintained good relations with President Lincoln and Secretary of War Edwin Stanton. He understood the importance of keeping his superiors informed and of working within the constraints of the political realities of the time. However, Halleck's cautious nature and his tendency towards bureaucratic procedures sometimes frustrated those who sought more decisive action. His critics accused him of being too concerned with political considerations and not focused enough on winning the war. Halleck's cautious approach to warfare, while effective in some respects, also had its drawbacks. His critics argued that his reluctance to take risks and his tendency towards slow, methodical advances allowed the Confederacy to prolong the war and inflict heavier casualties on the Union Army. They pointed to instances where Halleck had hesitated to pursue retreating Confederate forces or had failed to exploit opportunities for decisive victories. They argued that his cautious nature, while understandable given the high stakes involved, ultimately prolonged the conflict and cost the lives of Union soldiers. Halleck's supporters countered that his caution was often justified, given the limited resources available to the Union Army and the unpredictable nature of warfare. They argued that his methodical approach, while sometimes frustrating, ultimately contributed to the North's victory by minimizing casualties and preserving the Union's strength. In July 1862, after a series of Union setbacks in the East, President Lincoln summoned Halleck to Washington, D.C. to serve as General-in-Chief of all Union armies. It was a testament to Halleck's reputation as an organizer and strategist, but it also marked a significant shift in his role in the war. No longer in direct command of troops in the field, Halleck became the principal military advisor to the President and the Secretary of War. He was responsible for overseeing all aspects of the Union war effort, from strategy and logistics to troop deployments and the procurement of supplies. While he excelled in his new role, bringing order and efficiency to the Union High Command, Halleck's departure from the West left a void that would be difficult to fill. His successor, Grant, would ultimately prove to be the more adept field commander. But Halleck's contributions to the Union victory in the West should not be underestimated. As General-in-Chief, Halleck developed a close working relationship with President Lincoln. Lincoln, who had struggled to find a general who shared his strategic vision and who could effectively manage the vast Union war effort, came to rely heavily on Halleck's judgment and advice. Halleck, for his part, respected Lincoln's political acumen and his unwavering determination to preserve the Union. He recognized that the Civil War was as much a political struggle as a military one, and he worked closely with Lincoln to develop strategies that took into account both the military and political realities of the conflict. Their partnership, while not without its occasional tensions, proved to be a successful one. Halleck's organizational skills and his strategic thinking, combined with Lincoln's political savvy and his unwavering commitment to victory, helped guide the Union to victory in the Civil War. From his position as General-in-Chief, Halleck played a pivotal role in shaping Union strategy during the latter half of the Civil War. He recognized the importance of coordinating the movements of multiple armies across a vast theater of operations, and he worked to develop a comprehensive plan to defeat the Confederacy. Halleck's strategic vision emphasized the importance of maintaining constant pressure on the enemy, of striking at key strategic targets, and of gradually wearing down the Confederacy's ability to wage war. He understood that the North's superior resources, if effectively utilized, would eventually tip the balance in favor of the Union. While he faced criticism for his cautious nature and his tendency towards centralized control, Halleck's strategic guidance, combined with the battlefield successes of generals like Grant and Sherman, ultimately led to the defeat of the Confederacy. Henry Halleck's legacy as a Civil War general is a complex one. He was a brilliant strategist, a logistical genius, and a dedicated public servant who played a crucial role in preserving the Union. However, he was also a controversial figure, criticized for his cautious nature, his sometimes abrasive personality, and his perceived lack of battlefield brilliance. Despite these criticisms, Halleck's contributions to the Union victory cannot be overstated. His organizational skills, his strategic vision, and his ability to manage the vast logistical challenges of the war were essential to the North's success. He may not have been the most charismatic or the most daring of generals, but he was, in many ways, the right man for the job at a critical juncture in American history. In the annals of the Civil War, Henry Halleck's name may not resonate with the same legendary status as Grant or Sherman. However, his contributions as a strategist, organizer, and advisor to President Lincoln were essential to the Union victory and earned him a rightful place among the key figures who shaped the course of the American Civil War. As the guns fell silent and the dust settled after the Civil War, Henry Halleck, like many who had served, found himself at a crossroads. The nation, battered and bruised, began the long and arduous process of healing and reconstruction. For Halleck, the transition from the maelstrom of war to the relative calm of peace brought new challenges and opportunities. His tenure as General-in-Chief had been marked by both triumph and tribulation. He had played a pivotal role in coordinating the Union war effort, but his cautious nature and his sometimes abrasive personality had earned him his share of critics. Yet, through it all, he had remained a steadfast servant of the Union, his commitment to duty unwavering. Now, with the war won, Halleck sought a less demanding role, one that would allow him to utilize his experience and intellect without the crushing weight of leading armies in the field. In the summer of 1865, Halleck was relieved of his duties as General-in-Chief at his own request. President Andrew Johnson, Lincoln's successor, recognized Halleck's long service and appointed him to command the military division of the James, headquartered in Richmond, Virginia, the former capital of the Confederacy. It was a far cry from the grand strategic pronouncements and the endless stream of dispatches that had characterized his time in Washington. Yet, Halleck approached his new assignment with his usual diligence, overseeing the demobilization of Union forces and the restoration of order in a region still grappling with the aftermath of war. His keen eye for organization and his understanding of logistics proved valuable in the complex task of transitioning from a wartime to a peacetime footing. However, the political landscape of Reconstruction proved to be a minefield, and Halleck, never one for political maneuvering, found himself increasingly at odds with the policies of President Johnson. In 1869, after a frustrating stint in Reconstruction-era Virginia, Halleck welcomed a new assignment. President Ulysses S. Grant, his former subordinate in the Western Theater, appointed him to command the Military Division of the Pacific, headquartered in San Francisco. It was a fitting return to a region where Halleck had made his mark years earlier during the tumult of the Gold Rush. The Pacific Coast, still in its infancy, was a place of growth and opportunity, and Halleck embraced the chance to contribute to its development. He oversaw military operations in a vast region that encompassed California, Oregon, Nevada, and territories stretching to the Canadian border. His duties ranged from supervising the construction of forts and roads to managing relations with Native American tribes. During his time in the West, Halleck continued to display the organizational skills and attention to detail that had characterized his military career. He played a key role in implementing the government's policy of establishing reservations for Native American tribes, a controversial policy that aimed to consolidate federal control over vast territories. While Halleck's approach to Native American relations was typical of his era, marked by a belief in the superiority of Anglo-American civilization, he also recognized the need for order and stability in a region still grappling with the legacy of westward expansion. His time in the West was not without its challenges. He clashed with civilian authorities over jurisdiction and resources, and he faced criticism for his handling of labor unrest and anti-Chinese sentiment. Yet, through it all, he remained a staunch advocate for law and order, for the rule of law in a region often characterized by its Wild West image. Even as he carried out his military duties, Halleck never strayed far from his intellectual pursuits. He remained a voracious reader, his interests ranging from history and literature to science and engineering. He continued to write, publishing articles and essays on a variety of subjects. In 1868, he published a comprehensive work titled International Law, or Rules Regulating the Intercourse of States in Peace and War, which drew on his experiences during the Civil War and his deep knowledge of military history. The book, praised for its clarity and scholarship, became a standard text in military and diplomatic circles. Halleck's writings reflected his belief in the importance of order, discipline, and the rule of law, both in war and in peace. He argued that a strong military was essential to national security, but he also recognized the importance of diplomacy and international cooperation in maintaining peace. In 1872, after a long and distinguished career, Henry Halleck's health began to decline. He had spent decades in service to his country, from the battlefields of Mexico to the halls of power in Washington, D.C., to the far-flung outposts of the American West. He had witnessed firsthand the tumultuous events that had shaped a nation, from the rise of industrialism to the horrors of civil war, to the challenges of Reconstruction. Through it all, he had remained a steadfast and dedicated public servant, his intellect and his organizational skills leaving an indelible mark on the United States Army. On January 9, 1872, at the age of 56, Henry Wager Halleck died in his quarters at Fort Mason, California. He was laid to rest in Greenwood Cemetery in Brooklyn, New York, his grave a testament to a life spent in service to his nation. History, as we know, is written by the victors, and even more so, it's often shaped by those who possess a flair for self-promotion and a knack for captivating the public imagination. Henry Halleck, by his very nature, was never destined for such enduring fame. He was content to be the architect, not the hero of victory, the man who laid the foundation upon which others built their glory. And so, his legacy remains a subject of debate, his name whispered in the halls of military academies and among historians who delve into the intricacies of the Civil War, but rarely spoken with the reverence reserved for a Grant or a Lee. But perhaps that's fitting. Perhaps, in the grand tapestry of history, figures like Halleck serve a different purpose. They remind us that progress, whether on the battlefield or in the realm of human endeavor, is rarely the result of individual brilliance alone. It's the product of countless hands, some celebrated, many forgotten, all working towards a common goal. As we leave Henry Halleck to rest, his story woven into the fabric of American history, let us remember that the true measure of a life is not found in the accolades bestowed or the monuments erected, but in the impact one makes on the world and the lives one touches along the way. Halleck's legacy may forever be entwined with the tumultuous years of the Civil War, his name whispered alongside those of giants and titans who strode across the stage of history. But let us also remember him as a man of intellect, a dedicated public servant, and a tireless worker who, in his own way, helped to preserve a nation and shape its destiny. The echoes of cannon fire may fade with time, the names of battles and generals may blur in the mists of history, but the impact of those who served, who sacrificed, and who dedicated their lives to building a better future, that, my friends, will endure until the last note of the bugle call fades into silence.